All right, so today we're going to dive into this whole conversation surrounding the Bible and homosexuality.
Okay.
We've got some sources here that suggest maybe it's time to like shift it away from just like this kind of back and forth debate, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like move more toward understanding.
Right.
So our mission here is to like really tease out the most crucial insights from like the theological viewpoints, the cultural viewpoints, and the scientific viewpoints.
Absolutely.
And we're going to present all of that to you guys so you can have a clearer picture of like what's really going on.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention up front that we're aiming to provide this really concise overview
Right.
of all the arguments that are being presented for this kind of shift in perspective.
Yeah.
And we're going to explore various interpretations of the Bible,
Uh-huh.
as well as the relevant scientific findings, and all of this is without taking sides ourselves.
Right. Like always.
Exactly.
Okay, so why don't we just go ahead and dive right in?
Yeah, let's do it.
I think a good place to start is with like the whole idea of cultural and historical context.
Okay.
Because our sources really emphasize that like if you really want to understand these ancient biblical texts, you have to consider the world they were written in, like way back when.
Of course.
And so like applying these texts directly to modern ideas about identity without that like historical lens,
Right.
that raises some really serious questions, you know?
Yeah, I mean, a huge challenge, right?
Totally.
How do we even figure out which historical contexts are relevant for today?
Exactly. And, you know, our sources argue that societal norms have changed so drastically
Oh, yeah,
since these texts were first written.
absolutely.
Like, treating the Bible as just a simple rule book
Right.
without acknowledging that evolution of thought,
Mm-hmm.
it's a major point of discussion.
For sure.
Okay, so then there's this other piece that we have to consider, and that is the emphasis in so many different faiths on love and compassion and acceptance.
Right.
Like, could all this debate on this topic be actually kind of pulling us away from those core values?
That's definitely a concern that comes up in our material.
Yeah.
The idea is that this like constant division, it can distract from that central message of unity and love.
Right.
And that's really what a lot of these religious traditions actually put at the forefront.
Absolutely. Okay, so now this is where I think it gets really interesting, and this is where the science comes in.
Okay.
Because our sources point to this complex understanding of sexual orientation and gender identity
Mm-hmm.
that's influenced by a bunch of different factors,
Yes.
like biological factors, genetics, hormones, even psychological elements.
Not a simple issue.
No, not at all. And, like, what are the implications of that scientific view?
Well, it's important to realize that, like, organizations like the APA, the American Psychological Association,
Right.
they recognize these as natural variations in humans.
Interesting.
And this perspective really challenges this notion that these identities are just choices,
Right.
which our sources connect this directly to the ineffectiveness and even the harm of conversion therapy.
Okay, so now let's actually bring in some of the specific Bible verses that our sources highlight.
Right?
So Genesis 1.27 says we're all creating in God's image, male and female.
Right.
So how does that idea connect to our discussion?
Well, the argument that's being made is that this verse emphasizes the inherent worth and dignity of every single person.
Got it.
And so if we're all truly made in God's image, then that dignity extends to everyone,
Uh-huh.
no matter their sexual orientation or gender identity.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we've got Matthew 7.1-2.
Right.
Judge not, lest ye be judged.
Very well-known passage.
Yeah, pretty much everyone's heard that one before.
Yeah.
But how is it relevant in this context?
So in this case, it's presented as a call for humility
Okay,
and
I
self-reflection.
like that.
The idea is to approach others with understanding rather than jumping to condemnation.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, so then there's 1 John 4.8.
Okay.
God is love, pretty fundamental.
Couldn't be more fundamental.
So what's the theological point there?
So the idea is that love sits at the very core of the divine.
Yeah,
And because of that, acts of kindness and acceptance are seen as aligning with that core belief.
interesting. Okay, last one, Galatians 3.28 talks about there being no Jew nor Gentile slave, nor free male nor female.
Right.
All are one in Christ Jesus.
All one.
So how does this whole idea of unity play out in our discussion?
Well, the way it's interpreted here is that it emphasizes unity and equality within the spiritual community.
Gotcha.
So it suggests that these different these identity distinctions,
Right.
shouldn't create division
Yeah.
or unequal status within someone's faith.
I think it's fascinating how these theological ideas seem to echo that scientific understanding
Uh-huh.
that acceptance actually leads to better well-being.
Yeah.
Our sources note that social acceptance of sexual orientation is actually linked to higher psychological health.
Absolutely, and that's a really powerful connection to make. It suggests that fostering an accepting environment that's supported by both these theological principles of love
Right.
and the scientific insights into identity
Yes.
that can have these really tangible, positive effects on people's lives.
For sure.
And I think it's important to narrate here that we're simply reporting on these different viewpoints from our sources.
Right. We're not taking sides here.
Exactly.
Okay, so just to quickly summarize what we've covered in this deep dive today,
All right.
we've looked at all the different arguments presented in our materials for understanding the historical context behind these biblical texts,
Yes.
for prioritizing love and inclusion over everything else, and for considering that scientific understanding that sexual orientation and gender identity are complex
Right.
and natural.
Natural variations.
So I think this leads to a final thought for all of you listening out there.
Okay.
What if
Yeah.
we all shifted our focus away from debate and toward understanding and empathy,
Interesting.
informed by all of these different perspectives?
I like that.
What if we took the theological emphasis on love and we combined that with the scientific insights into identity and use that to contribute to greater well-being for individuals and for our communities as a whole?
It's really worth considering how interconnected all of these points are.
It really is.
Yeah.
So that's something for everyone to think about.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.